welcome to the Rock Your Dream Body and Dream Life interview series. Today, I am here with Brittany Brown. So just to tell you a little bit about Brittany, she is the founder of BeatingBingeEating.com, as well as the creator of the Beating Binge Eating Blueprint and the Food Freedom Forever Mastermind and Movement. Those are both a mouthful. After turning her own yo-yo weight loss and gain, binge and emotional eating, and severe health complications around, Brittany now leads other women internationally to create a life fueled by freedom instead of diets, weight, and food obsession as a women's empowerment leader, speaker, and international master coach. So she has spent 10 plus years working with hundreds of individuals, and despite her wide range of experience and education, Brittany always gets drawn back to her life's mission of helping women transform their struggle with their body and food so they are free to share their gifts with the world, step into their full purpose, and be who they are meant to be. So welcome, Brittany.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have this conversation because I feel like our messages are so aligned, and it's like I get so fired up by meeting and talking with other women who are on this same journey of sharing, their story and helping to inspire other women that might be struggling with the same types of things when it comes to yo-yo dieting and releasing that so you can really feel amazing in your skin.
Yeah.
So why don't we start out there? Tell us about your story of really rocking your dream body and your dream life by your definition.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. So mine goes back, my first struggle started, I think like everyone's, back in high school, I started putting on a little bit of weight, and I did what society teaches us to do, which is to diet. And, that's when I got kind of hooked on the diets. I think like Atkins at 14 years old was my first attempt at manipulating my body to where I wanted it to be. And it just was, that cycle from there. So I lived on different diets, probably from 14 till about 22. And I always thought the answer was the diet. And I always thought there was something wrong with me. So like, if I can just find the right diet, if I can find the right nutrition, I can do this, I can beat this thing, which is silly because there's a 95% failure rate when it comes to diets. But like, even if I consciously knew that, it wasn't enough to make me stop. It's really like all I knew. And there was so much fear keeping me in that cycle. And that went on in so many different forms. And there were, it got to the point, it went from like yo-yo dieting to gaining and losing the same weight. And then it got to the point where when I would restrict severely, the opposite reaction would be binging or emotional eating, or a little of both. And then it'd be restrict, binge. And, sometimes I'd be on a diet for a few months and then, fall off the wagon is like the diet, the diet saying, and then things would crumble on me for a week or two. And then the months shortened to weeks and the weeks shortened to days. And there was a time where I couldn't get through a day without, being like either emotionally eating or binge eating and being in like a very dark place with it. And for me, I tried to really make up for it. So I didn't just like eat healthy the next day. I would do drastic stuff like juice cleanses, diet pills, go to the gym for 2 hours. There's just so much control and fear around my weight. And I looking back on it, I put a lot of worth in my weight. And I felt like I had to be a certain size to like go out and do what I want to do, which is not the case at all, but it's just kind of what I was taught. Mm-hmm. And, that took me down the holistic nutrition route, which is cool because what had happened was from all the manipulation with my body and the yo-yoing and the beating it up, I got really severe health conditions. So I had thyroid, hypothyroid, which is slow thyroid, adrenal fatigue, what else? Hormone problems. And I did a fitness show in one of the little sprints I did with the restricting. And after that, my kidneys failed. And I was at like 21. And it was acute renal failure. The doctors didn't think it would turn around. And thank God it bounced back in like a week. But it was just really, that's when it was like rock bottom, like what's going on, things need to change. And I pursued holistic nutrition at that point. What was cool is I didn't even know that I was getting into it, but that's when my eyes started opening to the fact that other things affect our food choices besides our food. And also opened my eyes to the fact that, there's what you need to eat isn't what I need to eat. And what Sarah's doing at the gym, getting her results isn't what I need to do. And, it's how to figure out what to eat for your specific body. So that was like my first glimpse of freedom. And so the binges and the compulsive nature quieted. And I got picked up by this really big international coaching company to manage their health division. And I worked under a doctor and a nutritional therapist, and it was awesome. But what happened was, as I got a little more obsessed again with nutrition and health and controlled the eating more, the yo-yo spiraled. So I would, binge, overeat, gain the weight, diet to get it off, gain the weight, diet to get it off. And I just rode that cycle probably for another year, into the point that I felt so incongruent as a health coach that I quit. And I resigned publicly and explained what was going on. And that was the best point for me, because it caused me to go on a deep journey. It's after all the nutrition school and all the education in nutrition and nothing working, I was like, there's so much more than just the food. And that's when I went on a full journey of self-discovery. I had coaches, mentors, more training. I've read so many books, different certifications and courses, and really broke down those walls in myself that were keeping me in that cage. And so a ton of self-love work and work around my beliefs and accepting all of myself, the stuff I was trying to hide and probably stuff down with food and, the stuff that I loved. And one of my breakthroughs, the biggest breakthrough, was when I learned about the world of neuroplasticity and the fact that we can train our brain and train our behavior to do anything. So at first I did the emotional work, but I always felt like there was something wrong with me because I couldn't stop going to food for comfort. And the idea of having to fix all my emotional stuff was a little daunting. I wanted to be able to stop the going for food and work on the emotional stuff at the same time. So when I found neuroplasticity and the idea of reconditioning your beliefs, your brain, your behavior, and the fact that I could be objective about retraining myself to behave in a new way around food, that was a light bulb for me. And once I added that with all the deep emotional work, it was within a few months, I really had freedom. And then after about a year, it was real freedom where it's second nature. And then once everything felt second nature and it wasn't I'm binge free, I can help you stop binge eating, because that's fraudulent. If you're white knuckling your way through the day to not binge, you're not free of binge eating. You're just controlling your way through the day. So once I found that true freedom, the take it or leave it with food, and just can eat a cookie and not eat the whole box or whatever that looks like. When I really found that and that normal and ease with my body, and also when health has became second nature, where I'm naturally gravitating towards foods that really make me feel good. And when I got to that piece, that's when I was ready. I was I have to share this with the world. I have to get my mission out there. And that's what I think rocking your life is. Even if you don't have a mission of inspiring others to transform their body and food, or, even if you don't have a mission like that, showing up for your family, showing up for yourself, showing up for the world, and saying hi to a stranger with a smile without your face down because you're so shameful of what the behavior you had the day before. So I think when we free ourselves from the struggle with our body and food, we are free to share our gifts with the world. And rocking my life was putting my message out to the world and helping others, and doing it in a really big way, not a small way, and working through my fears and beliefs that when I first launched it, it was a small little baby idea. And then once I kept that conditioning work and training my mind to step into this really grand vision, now I feel there's no stopping it. And I just want to make a huge impact and help so many others. So to me, I feel rocking your life is really working through any beliefs or self-sabotage that's holding you back, and connecting you to your true power, which knows your purpose. It knows what to eat. It knows how to move. It knows what relationships you should be in. It knows what job you should take or what job you should leave. Tapping into that and following that, to me, that's totally rocking your life and rocking your body at the same time. So the summarized version.
Yeah, no, that was so great. You said so many things that I could relate to. And I think that the thing my whole mission is helping people to understand exactly what you just said, this idea of when you show up as the best version of yourself, the most inspired version, you cannot not inspire the people who get to be around you, because when you're in alignment, it's that just flows through, and that, it shines. It's literally, that's when you let yourself shine. Yeah. And going back to your story, I can remember attaching so much of my self-worth to that number on the scale too, or, in high school or even in college, squeezing into jeans or a skirt that was 3 sizes too small. And it was literally cutting into my skin because I thought wearing that size was makes me good enough or makes me beautiful. And it's so sad, because I think women can relate to that. It's you measure yourself by these external things that really are irrelevant. They have no meaning besides the meaning that you put on them.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, I had days back in the day where I would feel okay one morning, step on the scale, it would be a pound heavier. And all of a sudden I'd look in the mirror and think I've like looked bloated or overweight. But like a half an hour prior before I got on a scale, I thought I felt fine. And it's just, I think we get so trapped into that number or that size, like, oh, I don't want to be a size X, or a size, whatever size it is, and just get attached to that. And then we do to put our, even if we don't feel like we're putting our worth in it, we do. If we're holding ourselves back or feel like we have to be a certain size or the perfect weight or the perfect financial status or whatever that is before we can do X, Y, Z, we're using an exterior factor to like measure our success and our place in the world. And it's unfortunate. And I feel like you can break through it. But we think the answer is doing the stuff outside of ourselves, but it's always the internal work that really breaks you through it.
Yeah. And a lot of times people think, well, the internal work, it's like the internal work is the last thing on the list of priorities. We tried to like, people come to me, they're like, just tell me what to do. I just need like a step-by-step, like, eat these foods, do these workouts. I know, even though they know that's not like the solution because it's never worked, but we think that the internal stuff is woo-woo, but there actually is a science behind it. Like you're literally changing your behaviors by changing the way your mind works. So when someone comes to you and they're struggling with this stuff, what are some of the first steps that you have them start to work through in order to change the way they think?
Yeah, so I do it in a number of ways. We do make sure that their physical needs are getting taken care of first, and not with a meal plan, but with like a foundation to work from, because a lot of women that struggle with yo-yo dieting or binge eating or emotional eating, it's coming from that restriction and not giving their body and their brain what it needs. And I'm sure you know this, but there's a lovely little area back here that when you're not getting enough calories, or even if you are getting enough food, but you're mentally and emotionally restricting, like this is bad, this is good, I have to eat this today, that like spiral that, so many of us have been stuck on before, that triggers off those survival mechanisms. So right away, we do the work to release that and to ease that alarm, because people don't realize, they think they can out willpower that alarm. That's not true. When the survival mechanisms around getting you food are off, it's an irrational part of the brain they're coming from. It's an animalistic part of the brain. It's the part of the brain where your habits are, where things are on autopilot, and it's attached to your limbic system. That's where your emotions are. And then your beautiful conscious mind up here with your movement and your vision and your goals and your family connection and your personality tries talking to this irrational part of the brain and tells you not to eat, or, don't grab the cookie, you're going to feel better tomorrow if you don't. And there's no reasoning with that part of the brain because it's such an irrational automatic part. So like number one, right away, we calm that response down by giving the body what it needs, and also switching the perspective from fear, because to me, diets and control are rooted in fear of not losing weight, fear of what your body will look like if you don't control it,
Not being good enough.
Yeah, not being good enough, fear of losing control if you're not on a meal plan. And so all of a sudden, everything you're doing is in the name of fear and restriction. You can eat the same foods, but eat them in a way of love and nourishment and reverence for yourself. So that's kind of phase one, is like switching the perspective on how to nourish your body and making sure it's getting what it needs. And then once we get that little alarm calmed down a bit, then I always teach my people about the brain a little and how to make it very objective when separating themselves from their urges. Because like I mentioned, those urges are coming from another place. So what happens is if we put it all on emotions or we put it all on triggers, we feel like we have to control our emotions, cope with our emotions, fix ourselves, not be in a triggered situation, do all these things to avoid the binge or the emotional eating session. I'm just gonna use the word binge for the sake of the conversation, but binge can be like a big overeating session, or feeling like you've lost control around food, or just emotional eating. So a lot of times when people have an urge, they get so emotionally wrapped up and feel so wrong for it that it like adds that shame and guilt and spiral to it. So I always teach my clients how to separate themselves and how to be very objective. And I feel like that gives you your power back, because when you realize, hey, if I can separate myself enough from this urge, it's not going to be here the rest of my life. It will get deconditioned out of my brain as a pattern, and I will never have one. Oh, never is a strong word. I won't have one again if I can train my brain not to have one again. To me, that's so empowering when you felt like something's broken or wrong with you for years and years. And then, so that's phase two. And then phase three is always the deep stuff that I love. So like the belief work, the self-love, the body image and body love. I used to do that first. And what I would find is if someone just binged the day before, but they're trying body love affirmations the next day, that cognitive dissonance happens in the mind, and there's so much friction there that the affirmations don't feel real. Mm-hmm. So I like giving them their power back first and then doing that deep work. Then the deep work is what gets you the lasting change, changing your belief system, accepting yourself, still holding yourself to the highest version of you, but accepting all the parts of you. There's so much more work we do, but that's kind of like the phases of it. So I do handling the body's needs and the brain's needs, the mental side of things, and then we go into like the deeper internal work.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because I feel like this conversation of like masculine, feminine keeps coming up in all of these interviews. And what I'm hearing there is like the masculine side of us wants the science. They want the step-by-step. They want to hear like, tell me the mindset stuff that I can plug in and do right now. So once you have that, then you feel safe to do more of the feminine work, which is the nurturing, being in that receptive mode, understanding that you have to get yourself out of that, like go, fear-based, focused, analytical mind over into this place where you're nurturing your body, you're nourishing your way towards your goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I put a little of the feminine in the whole time because that's just, I think actually the key for healing. But then I like giving people that objective side of things too, because I feel like sometimes with emotional eating especially, it's so encompassing and flowy. Sometimes you need that like, okay, I can separate myself from this. I feel like the true healing lies in like the connection and that like flowy energy and just tapping into that. But there's different levels of breaking it down. And I think everyone, and from working with people, different things work for different people. So I try to pull from it all and just make something that's going to work for everyone and then customize it based on, the individual, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, like most of my clients don't know this, but a lot of times I'll give them what they want or what they think they need. And then I'll slip in the other stuff. That's what they really need. Like what that like emotional healing work really is. So that's awesome. I think everything, again, it's funny how similar we can be kind of traveling along the same paths and teaching similar stuff, but just with our own, each individual teacher, I think has their own way of sharing. That's so like awesome to hear and to celebrate because it is so tied to like your story and like the things that you've experienced yourself.
Yeah.
So for you, you mentioned like overcoming limiting beliefs and like writing a new story for yourself. What does that look like? So I know like a lot of people will be like, this is great. It sounds awesome, but I'm afraid it's not going to work for me because it never has. So,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably the biggest limiting belief of them all is self-efficacy, which is lack of belief in yourself to do the desired actions necessary to get the desired results, right? And then what happens if you've failed at this thing so many times with beliefs? Okay, so say I fail at every diet or I fail at everything having to do, we'll just use the belief like nutrition and health are hard for me and it's a struggle. So then this person all of a sudden is going out into the world as a person that believes nutrition and health is hard. That person that believes that's going to naturally talk in ways, look at their body in ways, act in ways, relate to other people in conversations in ways that reaffirm nutrition is hard, nutrition is hard, nutrition is hard. Belief reaffirmed, and it's just on repeat. So that's the tricky thing with beliefs. Your brain fights the new beliefs. Like when you try to train yourself, just saying like health is easy for me or I'm a healthy person, it doesn't, like it creates that friction, the cognitive dissonance that I mentioned earlier. So for beliefs, I like recognizing the limiting beliefs. So we'll use health is hard and then really getting attached to, I don't spend a lot of time here, but I spend enough to feel it, getting attached to like the cost of that belief on your life and the result. Like what happens when I go out into the world thinking health is hard? Like how do I interact, talk? Like I just mentioned, like really feeling and being with how detrimental these small little statements that we make to ourselves every day really are. And then I will flip it and implement a new belief. So let's say like I'm healthy and happy, happy and energized. So that belief creates a lot of friction to the belief that's been reaffirmed over and over and over again. So you want to start to build off references with a new belief. And I'm sure you've heard some ways to do it, like acting as if, so starting to embody characteristics of a person that believes they're happy, healthy, and energized. And little things like, there were so many grocery store lines that I would put my head down and not talk to someone because I was like embarrassed of what I was buying, or because I had so much shame around my food, right? So that was a big thing for me, just like committing to look people in the eyes and say hello. Back when I was very shameful, just little things like that. It starts training your brain that that's where you are. And when your brain thinks that that's where you are, your brain will position you and take you to get there. Or, how does the person walk, talk, and act that feels like they're healthy, happy, and full of life? Their shoulders are back, they're walking in confident. So things like that kind of speed up the belief process. Visualization is one of my favorites too. Took me a while to get into. I heard about it so much. I'm like, this is like woo-woo, which I like woo-woo, but still, it just didn't seem concrete enough. And then I'm hearing that all these professional athletes visualize.
Right. That's what I was going to say. If athletes do it, when you tell people athletes do this, then they're like, exactly. Oh, okay, yeah, I should do that too.
Or multi-billionaire CEOs are doing this sales meetings and things like that, and they're visualizing the results. I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And then when I studied that, I think that's a really great way to get people in the mode of things, because it trains your brain as if it's already happening. Mm-hmm. And so when you go to do those things in real life, your brain feels comfortable with it. So the fears don't come up as much. It's almost easier to do it when you've trained yourself it's already happened. And the brain cannot tell the difference between a deeply visualized experience and what's happening right in front of you. It registers the same. So that's a cool way. And then another one is just understanding, and I always make sure my clients understand this, there's going to be fear when you're doing something that's out of your norm, every time. There's that internal set point. I think I heard it from John Assaraf. He does a lot of the brain and the beliefs. He compared the set point to a thermostat. Yeah. So it's, if your house is at 70, the hot air comes in, it takes it to 70. Cold air comes in, it takes it to 70. Our internal set point's the same. If our performance is here and we try to go here, our beliefs, our brain, everything's going to try to take us back to our set point. So understanding that those fears, the irrational thinking, the telling yourself that you can't do it, the thinking about all the bad things that could happen, that's not really coming from you. That's coming from your programming. So I think learning to be able to separate from that and accepting man, these fears, this negative self-talk, this is part of the process too. And the more I keep moving forward, the more I keep walking forward, one foot in front of the other, my internal set point's going to keep raising and raising and raising. And I think I got it from Ryan. He calls it your new normal, which you're interviewing Ryan, right? Ryan,
yeah, we did it the other day.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a call with him the other day. That's right. He told me. So yeah, it's resetting your new normal. Yeah. And I think a lot of that, we can do the visualization, but it's the action that's so important, and just little baby steps, one foot in front of the other, and then it just shifts. It starts shifting when you really start taking action.
Yeah, actually, he and I talked about that, receiving, allowing yourself to bump up against those upper limits and really being okay with it. And just going back to your idea, one of the things you were saying was about visualizing or creating those references. And I remember when I was going through really allowing myself to achieve my ideal body without dieting, I remember thinking back to times when I was 7, and I could remember kind of bring myself back into that mindset of I didn't think about food. I didn't obsess about what I was eating. I didn't go to the gym every single day and work out. My body was just lean naturally. And when I would imagine that or look at in my mind, think of pictures of myself at that time, it was almost like I was reaffirming my body knows how to do this. It is this miracle of a machine. And if it did it then, it can do it now. And the same thing for me with hormones. I had a lot of hormonal issues, and I would think my body knew how to menstruate on its own on a regular basis before, and it can get back there again. And so it's creating those references, even of your own self or things like that, or even using other people's stories, I think is such a great way to move past those really strong beliefs and take off those old glasses and put on a new pair to look at things differently.
I use the glasses analogy too. Of course, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I love that. And I think it is even you just saying, that's such a belief system. Yeah. And if someone truly believes my body's going to fix itself, I don't like the word fix, but my body's going to learn how to balance itself hormonally naturally, and you believe that at your core, you're going to naturally gravitate towards actions that support that. And it just happens, like it shifts. So that's a huge belief. And you experience the transformation naturally with your hormones and everything.
Everything.
That's so cool. I did too. I still have a little thyroid going on, but we're working on it. So
yeah, I had the same thing with thyroid. I actually had a nutritionist tell me once that he thought I had Hashimoto's disease because I had so many like food allergies that he thought were, he couldn't figure out like what they were. And he's like, my opinion is that this is what you have. And that was when I decided, it was like my defining moment where I was just done with like this, giving my power away to other people and letting them tell me. And I was like, no, like I know better. Like I know that this will come back into alignment, and it did. And so that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this stuff too.
That's amazing. That's such a true testament. And you touched on like throughout the last few things you said, I think trust is such an important part, and like learning to, and that's the more feminine side of things, like we said. So we can do all this like separation and mindset and, beliefs and like having a structure to change our beliefs and things like that. But without that trust, and I think the trust comes from the connection, like, if you're spiritual, connecting to source, which is internal in us, if that's not your thing, just connecting to yourself and your power and trusting that. I mean, our bodies are brilliant. Like right now, I don't know what the stats are. I have a list of them actually, and I refer to them sometimes when I like slips my mind. But like how many times is our heartbeat in this conversation, or we're taking breaths without trying, or if I cut myself, it would be healed in 3 days. Like new cells come in and like it's so brilliant. And then that same force that's causing the seasons to change and making the tides come in and out is the same force that's running through us and making our body function optimally. So like if you really think about that, the thought that we have more control and over that like beautiful force of nature, it's kind of mind-boggling that we would ever think that in the first place, but it makes sense like when you look at societal conditioning and kind of just what we've all experienced through our lives and things like that. But I think tapping into that, whether you say it's connection or your power or just trust in yourself and your body and just the higher order of things, is like such a huge part of the process. Probably the biggest for me, because I don't think I could have tried so hard if I didn't trust or know that it would eventually, and you probably are the same thing. Like if you don't know or trust that it's going to eventually balance out, it's hard to like have that North Star that you're going towards. So I think that's
having that connection to something greater than yourself. And that's why I'm doing this whole interview series. Like it's not just about getting to a number on the scale. It's about getting into that mode of really rocking your dream body, knowing it's possible, and then putting your attention on living your life to the fullest. And I think things like like you said, like we literally started as one tiny cell that like bloomed into all of these other cells that knew what to do with all of these pieces to create a human being. Like if that doesn't show you what a miracle life is, I don't know what could, right? And so if that's true, then of course it's like our birthright to know that anything that we want to create for our lives is possible. We just have to believe it's true, like believe we can.
Yeah. And if someone is struggling with their body and food, the same things and the same power you tap into to break through that is the same power that generates a beautiful life and family and business. And it's, so what you learn in your struggle, whatever it is, even if it isn't your body and food, say it's terrible procrastination and self-sabotage in that way and not doing what someone needs to do, or say it's overspending and over shopping and being compulsive or going out or partying or whatever, like self-sabotage, because everyone's got their thing. I learned to be so grateful for my struggle. I don't think I would have ever even been pulled down this. Well, I'm sure I would have ended up there because it's meant to be, right? But that struggle pulls you down the path of getting to know yourself, of growing, of digging deep and transforming it and learning and connecting with others. Like technically the struggle brought me to this conversation right now, which is so cool. So I think relating to it that way and almost being grateful for the opportunity to get the lesson and really get to know yourself. That took me a while to get that mindset, but that mindset really did help ease things up a little bit too.
Yeah. And the expansion, like you really don't know what you're capable of until you have those challenging moments that you work through and get to the other side of, and then say, oh my God, if I did that, I can do anything, and that's where like really stepping into your purpose and knowing that that's possible is such it makes sense that's sort of like the next step when you start really recognizing like how powerful you are as a human being, as a woman, as a person walking around with all of these deep desires. I almost think that as we start to focus on those things, like that's when I work with my clients, I'm like, what really lights you up? Like, how good are you willing to let it get? Then a lot of the other stuff, like the old self-sabotage behaviors, like, trying to fill that void from within with food or whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of works itself out, because then you start to recognize like, oh, this is actually what life is all about. Oh, like I feel so good doing this thing. And then that other stuff I don't need to use to comfort or numb out.
Yeah, it's true. There's no room for it,
Mm-hmm.
like I couldn't physically do it right now. There's nothing that would make me go to that in this moment or any moment, no matter how. Someone said that the other day, like, you don't think if something really emotional or bad happened, you would turn to food? I'm like, it's not physically inside of me anymore. There's no room for it in my life or my mission or anything. Like, it would be, I can't even explain it. And everyone can get like that. No matter if you saw me like crying, not leaving my house for a week because I was so embarrassed about my body is so sensitive. I have food allergies and everything. So I would swell if I would eat even just a little bit of flour, or my body was just like a sensitive little piece. So if you'd have seen me in that state, and then to be able to say, I could never go back to that. And it was like a compulsive addiction almost at the time. So
Yeah.
anyone can do it. And it is really just tapping into that and stepping into your purpose. And even if you're not quite sure exactly what that is, going after it and breaking down those walls inside of you that are keeping you away from connecting to it. When you're truly connected to your power, like, there's no room for it. That crowds out like any self-sabotage. And if everyone has a little self-sabotage, right? It might pull back in certain times or things like that. But I feel like over time it gets less and less and less and less and less. So that's an awesome way to do it or look at it.
I think as you grow, like, and you hit those upper limits of like whatever level that is, like stuff pops up, but you know how to like work through it faster, because you have these tools that you can refer back to, and you're so much more aware. Like, you just know, oh, okay, I'm feeling these unworthiness. I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling anxious. Why? Like, what's the deeper thing that's going on here? And how can I shift that belief, like you talked about, into these new, more empowering beliefs of knowing, like, all these times these things in my life have happened where I have always been supported, or I've figured it out, or whatever. So if I can do that, I can do this, or this is for my greater good, like whatever makes you feel good, but you know how to work through it.
So true. That's such a good point, because now if something comes up, maybe years ago, it'll take you out for like, it could take you out for a year. Then it starts taking you out for just a month or two. And then it goes down to a week or two. And then it's a day. And then, oh man, like that little thing that came up that created that anxiety, that just like took me out 20 minutes, or I'm like, or maybe more in some cases, but in general, you have the tools to process it. And, not all like sadness, anger, anxiety, things like that, those aren't bad emotions. Like, they're here for a reason. It's just when you're self-sabotaging or when you're reaching for food, you're not feeling them and you're not getting the messages they're there to bring you. So you're missing out on like these beautiful messengers that are coming from potentially maybe an old story, but maybe they're legitimate and they're feelings you need to feel out to like guide your way through a decision. So I think that's a really big part of the process too, is sometimes it's kind of scary when you stop the behavior of eating, because all of a sudden you're feeling things that you haven't had to feel before, but it's like having a toolbox to be able to process the emotions, see where it's coming from, and the story, if there is one, that's kind of spiraling, and like move forward. So you're spot on. The tools, it's like, it used to take me out so long, and now it's more of like a discovery process when it happens.
I love that, because it is like, I love like calling it this journey of self-discovery and adventure and fun, and like really taking it to that next level on each thing. And like you said, so you have this addictive behavior or whatever, and whether it's food or shopping or whatever that thing is that you use to cope or numb out or handle your feelings, when you take that away, it's like, oh, these feelings are uncomfortable, but we have this full range of emotions for a reason, right? And they help guide us so that we can get back into those better feeling emotions, because that's our true nature, is to be on the more positive side. And the negative ones are just there not to tell us like you actually should feel shame or you should feel bad, but that like, this is not what this is like Abraham Hicks stuff, right? Like, this is not what your core, your source, your soul believes about you. That's why it feels so bad. So what does your soul believe about you? it believes these things. And when you use that sort of a mindset to shift over there, then it's like, oh yeah, of course this is, like for my greater good. Of course I'm headed in the right direction. I just have to keep myself focused on what really matters instead of all of the other stuff.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and I think food in those moments too, they take those, like, we'll call them negative emotions, and they don't honor them, and then it stuffs them down, and then they stay on loop, and then they're either never go away or they come back, and then it's just like Debbie Ford calls it the beach ball effect. I don't know if you've heard that, where you're trying to hold the beach ball underwater and it's like swimming around and then boom, it like pops up in your face. So her theory is those disowned parts of ourselves, or the like negative emotions, we try to stuff down, and they're constantly like smacking us in the face with an addiction, with watching 7 hours of TV instead of pursuing your life's dream or things like that. So yeah, you're spot on. It's really like getting those messengers and processing them and then attaching to your truth, which is like that joy and that light and all the good stuff.
Yeah. And so like for someone who is, maybe a busy corporate woman or a mom who's trying to like manage the house and kids and everything else. So, you gave some of the steps on how to get started, but do you give them guidance on like food and nutrition and like how to move their body, or do you allow them to typically figure that out for themselves and you just kind of guide them through that? How do you handle that?
So with like the foundation and making sure their body is getting what it needs, I don't give them specific foods at first, because most of my clients are more on like the binge, restrict, compulsive cycle, where it is strongly programmed in their mind, and we have to break that. So sometimes releasing the restriction and releasing the limitations on food is actually what we need to do first, and then conditioning them to, like, when they're coming from a nourishing, loving place, it's not restrictive, right? They're just wanting to give themselves food that feels good. But I do start them with the foundation, so I can give you like a glimpse of what that looks like to make sure. So it's not like a set meal plan at all, but from studying so many people and working with so many, I've realized a few things. There's a huge common misconception that we have to eat every 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, that's a lot of food all day. If you're a busy corporate woman thinking about packing like little baby snacks and like 3 almonds and an apple, like, doesn't sound satisfying to me. It works for some people because some people like the small stuff. Most binge or overeaters or emotional eaters are actually missing that mealtime experience because they're either on the go all the time and skipping meals, or they're doing the whole like fitness myth, which is you have to eat every 2 hours or 3 hours. There's like no scientific evidence for that. Some people with blood sugar and some people might actually need to, but in general, you can nourish I like having my clients have more satisfying meals less throughout the day. And what I found is if they just do breakfast, lunch, and dinner, by the time they get home for dinner, they're ravishing. And most women or people are nighttime eaters. They'll eat less throughout the day or feel like they can control it during the day. And then night comes around when the kids are screaming and husband's doing this and they have to pack lunches and get ready for the day. They're like eating as they're getting dinner ready, or, and then the binge just spirals from there, right?
Yeah, so they like hit that breaking point.
Exactly, yeah. And whether it's emotions or whether it's just habit, like however you look at it, it's happening. What I do to combat that is we usually do like a satisfying breakfast and lunch, normally pretty balanced, so consisting of like protein, carb, vegetable, and a small fat. And this isn't like, they don't have to calculate this. It's just for them to have in their mind what a balanced meal is. If they just eat something that's satisfying, that's better than skipping through it or eating a small meal or not eating at all. So that it could be maybe like 4-ish hours apart whenever they're feeling like they need to eat. And then an afternoon meal, like not a snack, not like one apple. I have found almost can cut the behavior in half by having like a satisfying meal to yourself, present, like slow, actually getting the mealtime experience before you go home to that chaos. Just that little trick I found, not really trick, but that little like thing, it works like wonders. And with the 4 meals a day, I find that people get that satisfying meal experience. They feel satisfied. They feel like they actually ate something. So I start there. Not everyone stays there. It changes. If someone's hungry earlier, they should eat earlier. But the way we do it is once they're learning how to listen to their body, let's say they ate at noon and they're hungry again at 2. They can eat again at 2. No need not to, but they should know tomorrow that, hey, maybe my noon meal should be a little more substantial to get me through a few more hours. So I'm not like having to think about what I'm going to eat all day. And eating those little baby meals you're on a food focus all day and you're looking at the clock like, oh, it's noon. I got to eat at 2:30. And if you're a busy corporate woman, you don't have time for that, you know, or a mom or anyone. Most people don't have time for that nowadays. So I start with that foundation, and then we combine that with a little intuitive eating and teach them how to listen to their body. I use the word intuitive eating, so I have to preface that with, intuitive eating can be a diet in itself, because you can start like punishing yourself for eating when you're not hungry. And I think there's some times where we may be out with friends and eat an appetizer that we're not really hungry for. And that's cool too. So I think, you know, it's having the foundation and then understanding the allowance. And I used to have my clients ask what's nourishing for my body in this moment, but I don't do that anymore. I have them ask what's nourishing for me in this moment. Because sometimes something nourishing may actually be like a glass of wine and a little bit like an appetizer with your girlfriend. That might not be what's like the best thing nutritionally, but when you allow yourself those experiences that are nourishing, then, you know, it doesn't have to be a glass of wine either. I don't really drink, but I'm just use that as like an example, because a lot of women like enjoying that, right? When you give yourself that experience though, the odds of you wanting that a majority of the time are really low. So you let yourself have those little experiences that you feel like you really crave. And then majority of the time when you ask yourself what really feels good, that's normally going to be something that is going to energize you and make you feel good. So I know that's a very loose, flowy answer, and it almost has to be, because I can't give you like an exact thing, because that's the spiral of behavior, you know, but those are like, that's what we start with. And then we just teach them how to adapt that and really check into that internal wisdom and figure out what's going to work best for them over time.
I completely agree. And so what I'm hearing from you is like convenience, like it's got to fit your lifestyle, number one, or else you're not going to be able to stick to it. And number two, allowing yourself to receive pleasure when you eat, because a lot of times we try to eat and drive or read emails or all these things, and our body isn't able to fully receive those nutrients because it's not like our digestive system's not turned on.
Yeah,
so that's why we want more. So I totally agree with everything that you said. Like you just have to make healthy easy, I think is like the place to start. And then from there you can, you know, go in whatever direction feels best for your lifestyle.
Agreed. And I think listening to your body is key. Like I remember I would think in my diet I had to eat at this time. So then I would think something was wrong with me if I was hungry earlier, and then not let myself eat until the time I was supposed to eat. Or I would do something like, hey, I had a big lunch, but I'm kind of hungry, but I'm doing dinner later. I'm just going to try to go the whole afternoon and just save the calories or whatever for dinner. Like there's no rules here. You really want to listen to your body. So I think it's like tapping into that too. Even if you are starting with a foundation, like, you know, that's making your health easy, it's okay if the plan you came up with in your head doesn't feel right for you. Like you can adjust it. And I think when you live on a diet, there's like no adjusting. Like you're just trying to willpower your way through the rules. And you know that I think it's a pendulum. If you're way over here in dieting, you're going to be way over here in overeating. If you're kind of in the middle, the swings aren't going to be that drastic.
Yeah, it's like not having those black and white rules.
Yeah, all or nothing for sure.
Yeah, this was awesome. I feel like we had so many great tips here and strategies for really feel like getting out of that mindset of binge eating, yo-yo dieting, like that kind of a thing, and knowing exactly how to start plugging in these more healthy, empowering behaviors. And so I know you have a free gift for anyone that wants to learn more about you or maybe take this further with you. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so it is my Beating Binge Eating Quick Start Guide. Even if you're not struggling with binge eating, if you're struggling with any of that like yo-yo, so anything that looks like restriction or control, overeating, guilt, restriction or control, you know, like the roller coaster, or binge eating or emotional eating, it will help you. It's a 7-step guide. So it's 7 principles and then an action step after each principle for you to incorporate. You can read it all at once. I love if people read it like one day at a time or even 1 week at a time. You could take the 7 principles and implement them over 7 weeks and get like a dramatic change in your relationship to food and just your overall like ease with your health and your life. So I'll give everyone access to that.
Awesome. So we're going to have a link to that below the interview. And so is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure that you shared on the interview today?
I feel like, I could talk probably to you for hours. I feel like we got a lot of good stuff in. I think one big thing, I'm sure I said this, but when anyone's struggling, whether it's food or whatever it is, you know, we've talked about food, so we'll just say that struggle, or your body or how you feel about your body. It's so important to realize that you're not broken and you don't need to be fixed. There's just a couple things standing between you and connecting to that power. And the trick is dismantling that wall that's in between you and you. You know what I mean? It's like the real you knows all these things. So you don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to go, you're not broken. It's just tapping into that. And you can have all the methods in the world, but until you tap into, I had a million methods. I knew everything you could know about nutrition, but I wasn't tapped into that. And the tapping into that is what really set me free. So I just think it's when you're struggling, it's so easy to feel like there's so much you have to fix. I think everything's perfect. It's just tapping into like that, your power.
Yeah. So true. I absolutely agree. So thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate your time today and having this conversation. And I hope that women really take away this idea that it doesn't have to be that way. And like, it doesn't have to be the strict black and white. Like, you really can create the plan that's perfect for you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
All right. So take care, and I will see everyone on the next interview.